Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we would be analysing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 16th January 2018. Now let us begin. Now from page 1, we would be analysing three news. First is, we need to know as to what is an LoC and how is it different from the international boundary between India and Pakistan. The second news we would be analysing from page 1 is of the face recognition for Aadhaar card. The third news we would be covering is of the Israeli Prime Minister visit to India. And the fourth and the last news from page 1 we would be covering is on the National Medical Commission Bill. Moreover, the news on the differences with Chief Justice not yet resolved has been covered in the DNS of 13 January. And you can refer to that video to understand what is the main reason for the controversy. How are benches allocated in the Supreme Court? The recent Supreme Court roster case. And also, how is the roster prepared in the Supreme Court? And so you can refer to that video to get an in-depth understanding of this issue. Now let us analyze the news on the LoC and understand where it is placed in the UPSC syllabus. Now the UPSC syllabus of 2017 Civil Services Examination. Now border and border management is part of your GS paper 3 under the security section. So let us understand as to what is the LoC and how is it different from the international border between India and Pakistan. Now if you see this image, there is a black line which divides the Indian Jammu and Kashmir from the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now this line is known as the line of control. Now the length of the India-Pakistan border is of 3323 kilometers or 3323 kilometers. Now this 3323 kilometers includes the LoC. Now the line of control is a de facto border. Now the de facto border means that it is the actual border but is not officially recognized as an international border by India. Now prior to the Shimla Agreement, this border was known as the ceasefire line, and it was only after the Shimla Agreement was signed that this border came to be known as the line of control. Now there is one primary difference between the international border between India and Pakistan and the line of control, and this difference can be asked in your prelims examination. Now the international boundary between India and Pakistan is guarded by the Border Security Force or the BSF, while the line of control is guarded by the Indian Army. Now hopefully up till here, you have a pictorial understanding of the line of control. You also understand as to why is it called the de facto border, how LoC got its name, and what is the difference between the international boundary between India and Pakistan and the LoC. Now another aspect that you should understand. Now from this image, the LoC ends here. And this point is known as NJ9842. Now the boundary beyond this point delves into the Siachen Glacier. So let us understand this boundary also. Now if you see this image, the LoC ends at this point and this yellow line defines the actual boundary at the Siachen Glacier. And this boundary ends at this point called Indira Col. And this boundary is known as the Advanced Ground Position Line. Now hopefully you also have a pictorial understanding of the boundary at the Siachen Glacier, and you also know from where it begins and where it ends. So hopefully if a question is asked in your prelims or your mains examination as to the difference between the international boundary between India and Pakistan, the line of control, and the advanced ground position line, you would be able to answer. Now we move on to our next article. Now we have taken the news on the face recognition from page 1, and this news continues further on page 12, and also there is a lead editorial on Aadhaar on page 10. Now we would first analyze the news on the face recognition. Now this news is also discussed on page number 13 of the Indian Express newspaper. Now let us see as to why is it in the news. Now UIDAI, or the Unique Identification Authority of India, now it has said that it will enable face recognition as an additional mode of Aadhaar authentication. However, this additional mode would only be used in a fusion mode. Now this fusion mode means that face recognition would be used along with other biometric details such as iris scan or fingerprints. However, UIDAI has clarified that face authentication shall be done only on a need basis. Now hopefully up till here you have understood as to why is it in the news, why is it in the news for, as to what is meant by the fusion mode, and what is the one condition on face recognition for Aadhaar. Now let us understand as to why is face recognition necessary. Now the reason why is it necessary is because it will help those who are unable to use the existing biometric. Now they are unable to use the existing biometric either due to iris injury or their fingerprints had been worn out. Now, as you may have heard, many individuals, because of old age, manual labor, or because of a skin disease, cannot get their fingerprints recognized by the machine. So, because of this, many individuals who are of old age or are manual laborers were unable to receive benefits of any government schemes or entitlements. But now they can use facial recognition plus one other biometric detail to get their Aadhaar card made. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood as to why facial recognition for Aadhaar is necessary. You further understand as to why the existing biometrics have led to problems in forming of Aadhaar cards for certain individuals and how facial recognition is supposed to help them. Now, let me ask you a question. Now, the question is an amendment required in the Aadhaar Act to facilitate face recognition? Now, the answer to this would be a no. Now, let us understand this from the Aadhaar Act itself. Now, if you take a look at the Aadhaar Act, in section 2G, there is a column called the biometric information. Now, in it says biometric information means photograph, fingerprint, iris scan, or any other such biological attributes of an individual as may be specified by regulations. Now, apart from these three biometric information of iris scan, fingerprints, and photographs, the government can introduce any biological attributes through a normal regulation. So, as of now, they have introduced facial recognition. Now, apart from this, the government also collects demographic information. Now, in the demographic information, it collects your name, date of birth, and the address. And apart from this, as you can see in section K, it can also collect any other relevant information as may be specified by regulations. So in the future, the Government of India can add more details even in the demographic information, apart from the information that have been exempted in section K, such as race, religion, caste, tribe, etc. So hopefully up till here, you've understood the biometric information, the demographic information, and moreover, you also understand on how more biological attributes or demographic attributes can be added by the Government of India. Now coming back to the lead editorial on page 10, now a 5-judge constitution bench headed by the Chief Justice of India shall hear the issue of constitutionality of the Aadhaar and other matters from 17 January 2018, that is tomorrow. So it would be more appropriate to let us see the verdict of the Supreme Court come out and then let us understand from the Supreme Court's point of view as to how super surveillance and other matters that this article has raised come out. Now let us move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from page 1. Now an analysis of the National Medical Commission Bill had been done in a much earlier video, but let us recap and revise the National Medical Commission Bill. Now let us first understand as to why is it in the news. Now the AIIMS Resident Doctors Association has opposed this bill, and similarly those who have seen the last video would also know that the Indian Medical Association has also opposed this bill. Now let us first get an overview of the National Medical Commission Bill and then understand as to why is it being opposed. Now the National Medical Commission Bill intends to regulate medical education and medical practice in India. The second feature of this bill is that it seeks to repeal the Indian Medical Council Act of 1956. And the third and the last feature of the National Medical Commission Bill is that it seeks to dissolve the Medical Council of India and form the National Medical Council. Now hopefully up till here, you have understood as to why is it in the news. What does the NMC bill seek to do? What is the NMC bill repealing? And moreover, you understand which bill is dissolving the Medical Council of India and which bill is forming the National Medical Council. So if any of these facts come in your prelims examination, you would be able to answer. Now let us further understand as to why the Indian Medical Council Act of 1956 is being repealed and why the Medical Council of India is being dissolved. Now in 2015, the Ranjit Roy Chaudhary Committee report recommended to restructure the Medical Council of India. And moreover, this committee suggested the formation of the National Medical Council under a new NMC Act. Now in addition to this, in 2016, the Dr. Arvind Pangadia Committee report under the Niti Aayog also proposed that the Indian Medical Council Act of 1956 to be replaced by a new law. Now the question is as to why both these committees gave such views. Now according to them, there is over-centralization in the Medical Council of India. And moreover, both commissions asserted that the provisions of the Medical Council of India are outdated. And now we come to the question as to why is it being opposed. Now, according to the various doctor bodies, the Act allows for government nominated chairmen and members. Now, it is being opposed by the doctors' associations because they assert that it has over-representation of government bureaucrats and politicians, and therefore they want more representation for the doctors themselves. Now, the second point on which it is being opposed, now the fees of 60% of the seats in private medical colleges would be decided by the colleges themselves. Now, the doctor associations are opposing this because it would increase the cost of medical education. Now, the third point on which it is being opposed is that it allows Ayush practitioners to prescribe allopathic medicines after completing a bridge course. Now, according to the Doctors Association, this is an experimental system and requires further studies and scrutiny before it is implemented. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood as to why the Indian Medical Council Act of 1956 and the Medical Council of India need to be repealed and dissolved respectively, on whose recommendation it is being done so. You also understand the reason given behind the recommendation to repeal and dissolve. You also further understand as to why the bill is being opposed by the doctors' associations and bodies. So if a question is asked in your mains examination, which asks you to critique the National Medical Commission Bill, you can state and explain these 3 points. Now we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from page 10. Now what this article talks about is the Jasmine Revolution that started the Arab Spring. Now the information given in this article is very specific to the internal politics of Tunisia and therefore is not relevant for your UPSC examination. But there are certain facts which are important for your prelims examination. Now as some of you might know, that a question was asked in the 2014 prelims examination about the Arab Spring. Now we have taken this question from the UPSC prelims examination of 2014. Now obviously as you know, the correct answer was Tunisia. Now similar to this question, other questions of the Arab Spring or the Jasmine Revolution can be asked in your UPSC prelims. So a question such as which of the following country is associated with the Jasmine Revolution can be asked in your prelims examination. Obviously the correct answer would be Tunisia. So therefore remember 2 points, that the Jasmine Revolution led to the Arab Spring, and the second point that it occurred in Tunisia. And therefore this is all we required to understand from this article. So we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from page 10. Now this article discusses the issue of low agriculture prices due to the supply chain problem. Now it says that the prices of crops such as potato, chili, tomato have decreased in this season due to excess supply. Now to explain this problem, he uses the Cobweb Model. So let us understand this Cobweb Model or the Cobweb phenomena. Now this model explains the fluctuation in farm prices. Now this model states that the supply of output agricultural crop adjusts to the changing conditions of demand. But this adjustment is with a time lag. Now this time lag, it means that the adjustment is not instantaneous but occurs after a certain period of time. Now let us understand this with an example. Suppose in 2015-16, prices of potatoes are high. Now this price is high because there is a shortfall in supply. Now there is a shortfall in supply because let's say about 100 farmers had produced 50 kgs of potato each. So therefore the total supply was of 5000 kg, while maybe the demand had been of 10,000 kg. But let's say in 2016 and 17, farmers, because they knew that the prices of potatoes were high in the previous year, started planting potatoes. So now what would happen is the number of farmers who have planted potatoes would increase. So the number might come up to 500 farmers who would now be producing 50 kgs of potatoes each. Therefore, the supply becomes 25,000 kg, while the demand for potato is still the same at 10,000 kg. And because of this, the supply of potatoes have increased and have led to the decrease in its prices. So according to the Cobweb phenomena, the prices of a crop in a particular year or a season increases because the supply is low, and because the price is high in this season or this year, more farmers end up pursuing that crop, and therefore that increases the supply and decreases the price. And this time period of 1 year or of one season is known as lag. Hopefully up till here you've understood the Cobweb model and how it affects agricultural product. Now based upon this Cobweb phenomena, let us understand the reasons for farmer distress. Now according to the author, The farmer distress is due to the price fluctuations that occur due to the cobweb phenomenon. And because of this price fluctuation, the income of the farmers remain irregular. Now it further states that short-term populist measures have also led to farmer distress. So populist measures such as farm loan waivers is not a good approach as it will create an incentive for farmers to default on their loans and hamper the credit culture of the rural economy. And the third reason that the author gives for farmer distress is of MSP. Now, higher minimum support price for farm products cover very few crops, and many farmers are also misinformed about the MSPs. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the three reasons given by the author for farmer distress. Now, let us understand the long term permanent measures that the author recommends. Now, one of the measures that the author recommends is of improving the supply chain management. Now, to improve the supply chain management, its over-regulation should be removed. The second measure that the author recommends is of forward-looking contract. Now, forward contracts are between two parties to buy or sell an asset at a specified future date for which a price is decided today. So, what it means that, let's say a farmer would decide the price of his potatoes as of today and he would sell it maybe 6 months later. So, in this way, the farmer can hedge his bet against price fluctuations. And the third and the last point that the author suggests is the removal of agricultural cartels. Now, this can be done by regulating the APMC or the Agriculture Product Marketing Committee. So, now hopefully, up till here, you have understood the three improvement measures that the author has given. You also understand as to what are forward contracts and what is APMC. Now, with regards to your UPSC examination, for your prelims exam, what is important is for you to know what is Cobweb Model and what it measures. And while for your mains examination, what is important to know are the causes for farmer distress and the improvement measures to remove them. Now with this, we move on to our next article. Now we have taken this news from page 13. Now what this article talks about is the India's recent UN vote on the Jerusalem issue and how this vote is not affecting India's relationship with Israel. Now the scope of which this article talks about has been covered in the January edition of the Focus magazine. So let us understand this news with the Focus article itself. Now the January edition of the Focus magazine covers the issue of Jerusalem. It starts with a brief overview of the city of Jerusalem and then gives the chronology of the political status of Jerusalem from 1920 to the Oslo Accords in 1993. Now what the article refers to is of the recent UN vote. Now as you may know, US President Donald Trump decided to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now because of which, the United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting with regards to this decision, and the 14 members of the UNSC, which includes the 4 permanent members UK, France, Russia and China, and the 10 non-permanent members, condemning the US policy. Now subsequently, a resolution was introduced in the United Nations General Assembly, and that resolution passed by 128 votes. Now what that resolution specified was countries not to establish diplomatic missions in Jerusalem. It declared null and void any actions intended to alter Jerusalem's status, apart from other specific points. Now, India had voted in favor of this resolution, but its favorable vote is not considered to have any negative impact on its relationship with Israel. Now, as similarly referred to in the article, let us understand as to why it would not have any negative impact. Now, the first point is that Israel requires India more for defense exports. Now, roughly 41% of Israeli military exports come to India, and therefore Israel requires India for its defense exports. And the second reason is that India-Israel relations have moved beyond being overshadowed by the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Now, it means that the relations are not hyphenated anymore. Now, you have to understand, Narendra Modi, during his recent visit to Israel, dehyphenated India's relationship with Israel and Palestine. Now, it means that India will maintain separate relations with Israel and separate relations with Palestine, and wherein India would not try to balance both of these relations as it had been doing in the past. Now, hopefully, up till here, you have understood why the Indian vote at the United Nations General Assembly will not have a negative impact on India-Israel relationships. And to further understand this, you can refer to the January edition of the Focus magazine. Now, with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's paper. Let's move on to the question for today.